Hi, and welcome to this tech series video on the installation procedure for the JK frame-mounted rocker knockers. Many of you might be watching this video as part of your decision-making process on which rocker protection to buy for your Jeep. So before we get into the installation procedure, I'll go over some of the features and benefits of this particular rocker knocker and explain the differences between the frame-mounted rocker knocker and the body-mounted rocker knocker. The frame-mounted rocker knocker and the body-mounted rocker knocker are identical except for their method of attachment, and we'll get into the method of attachment here in a minute. They both use an 1 3/4 DOM tubing for the bottom rail. The DOM tubing is much more dent resistant than the welded seam tubing is, which seems to be the industry standard. The top rail is an 1.5 inch DOM tube, again 120 wall. And they're attached with a plate that you can't see behind here. It's a 3/16 plate that attaches the two together, which helps with the strength. But one of the things that we've done on our rocker knockers that most haven't done is we added a removable plate. It does two things. If you powder coat your rocker knockers, you can actually paint this body color, which a lot of people have done. We've showed it raw here. But if this gets scratched or worn, you can take it off and touch it up pretty easily and bolt it back on. So it's kind of a cool feature. The dimple dies add a lot of strength to the plate, so the whole thing is a strong unit. And when we had the body-mounted rocker knockers, we could have easily just attached the tube and made them frame-mounted, but we wanted to do something a little different. Our original rocker knockers were body-mounted rocker knockers. Great design. They captured the structural part of the tub and the pinch seam to give you a lot of strength, but a lot of you have asked for something a little different, the frame-mounted version of the rocker knocker. The easy way, of course, to do that would have been to take a tube, attach it to our existing rocker knocker, weld it to a plate that you would bolt to the frame. The problem with that is there's a lot of leverage there. If you can imagine the rocker knocker being out here, and you take your 5,000-pound Jeep and you come down on a rock, there's a lot of opportunity for this to flex. Not only this plate to flex on the frame, but for this tube to flex up and down just because there's so much leverage. So what we've done, instead of taking the easy way, we've designed and engineered outrigger to attach the rocker knocker to the frame. Our outrigger not only goes up the full length of the frame and actually tucks under the frame, so that L shape gives it a lot of resistance against rolling. The shape of it is a triangle, which kind of acts as a gusset, which actually further resists the motion or the tendency for it to want to move up. And then we've gone a step further, and each one of these is attached to the body mount with a through bolt. One more way to keep the thing from wanting to push up into the tub, which is what you're trying to protect in the first place. So we feel we've engineered not only the strongest rocker knocker, but the strongest attachment system for that rocker knocker to the frame, which in our opinion makes it probably one of the strongest rocker protections you can buy for your JK today. A couple of things to think about if you're considering rocker protection for your Jeep. First, if you're running a frame-mounted rocker, you're probably giving up ground clearance over what most body-mounted rocker protection will give you, will provide you. Also, if you are running or considering running a body lift, remember a body-mounted rocker protection will move up with that body lift kit, where a frame-mounted rocker protection will not. So you may create a gap when you move that the tub up with the body lift. Also, if you are or you plan on running a long arm kit, most frame-mounted rocker protection will have some interference issues with the long arm kit. So if you are running a long arm kit or considering running a long arm kit, before you order, be sure and talk to our sales staff. We've worked on a few workarounds for some of the kits that might work for you. Next, we'll show you the installation procedure on a slightly modified Jeep. If after watching this video you realize that you've got an aftermarket upgrade that might interfere with this installation, please feel free to call our sales staff. They may have already worked out a workaround for that, or they may be able to tell you whether or not it's going to work with that aftermarket part or not. So please feel free to give our staff a call. They're anxious to talk to you.
Before starting this install, your Jeep should be parked on a level surface with the emergency brakes set. First off, you're going to need to remove the factory rocker protection or steps that may be installed on your Jeep. To do this, you will need a 1/4 inch drive, 10mm socket, and 13mm socket to remove the hardware that fastens the rocker protection to the Jeep. Don't discard this hardware as you will need it to reinstall the rockers. Remove the factory rocker protection from the Jeep by gently pulling it away from the tub. Starting with the driver's side, remove the factory bolt that attaches the transmission skid plate cross member to the bottom of the frame rail. Do not remove the bolt on the other side of this cross member or the cross member itself. Just remove that one bolt and keep it handy for reinstallation. Install the driver's side rocker knocker by sliding the mounting flange of the forward outrigger in between the bottom of the frame rail and the transmission skid plate cross member. Reinstall the factory transmission skid cross member bolt, but be sure the rearward 2 outriggers are snug to the side of the Jeep's frame rail as you tighten this bolt. Use a pen or transfer punch to mark the centers of the bolt holes for the 2 rearward cross members. You will want to push the rocker knocker snugly up against the bottom and the sides of the frame rail, and also against the adjacent body mount brackets while marking these holes. Now you'll want to remove the rocker knocker to drill each of the 2 marked hole locations to a finished hole size of 29/64 of an inch. You will want to start with a small pilot hole of about 3/16 of an inch and step up the hole size at least one size before reaching the final hole size of 29/64. Be careful to hold the drill very straight and very steady on the final pass, as the hole will be threaded in the next step. Use the supplied 1/2 inch 20 tap to thread each of the 2 new holes. If you aren't familiar with the proper use of a threading tap, we suggest seeking help from a friend who's familiar with the process, or research online for proper procedures of using a threading tap. Now it's time to reinstall the rocker knocker. Reuse the factory bolt at the front outrigger. At the center outrigger, insert the supplied 3/16 inch thick steel spacer between the mounting flange and the frame rail, and secure it with one of the supplied 1/2 inch 20 by 1 inch grade 8 hex head cap screws and a 1/2 inch flat washer. At the rearward outrigger, use one of the supplied 1/2 inch 20 by 1 inch grade 8 hex head cap screws and a 1/2 inch flat washer without the spacer. Note that each outrigger is positioned against an adjacent body mount bracket and that there is a pre-existing 3/8 inch hole in the side of the outrigger. Using the hole in the outrigger as the drill guide, drill a 3/8 inch hole through the body mount bracket adjacent to each outrigger. Use the supplied 3/8 inch hardware to bolt the outrigger to the side of each body mount bracket through the newly drilled holes. Use the 3/8 inch 16 by 1 1/4 inch grade 8 hex head cap screws, flat washers, and lock nuts at the 2 rearward outriggers, and use the 3/8 inch 16 by 1 inch grade 8 hex head cap screw, flat washers, and lock nut at the forward outrigger. Now you can move to the passenger side and repeat the rocker knocker installation process described in the previous steps. However, on the passenger side, you will reuse the factory gas tank skid plate bolts for the 2 rearward outriggers instead of drilling and tapping new holes. Begin the passenger side install by removing the transmission skid plate crossmember bolt and the 2 gas tank bolts along the underside of the frame rail that correspond with the rocker knocker outrigger mount flanges. When installing the passenger side rocker knocker, use a pry bar to separate the gas tank skid from the frame slightly so that the rocker knocker mounting flange can slip between the skid plate and the frame rail. You may need a friend to help with this step. On some year model Jeeps, there may be a small sheet metal bracket on the side of the frame rail near the location of the center outrigger on the passenger side. If your Jeep has this bracket, you may need to cut it off and grind it smooth in order for the rocker knocker to fit properly. Primer and paint any bare metal after cutting and grinding to prevent rust. Once the pre-installation is complete and fitment for both sides is confirmed, remove both rocker knockers for paint or powder coat. Now you can paint or powder coat the rocker knockers and removable skid plates. If you're painting them yourself, we recommend thoroughly cleaning the parts and then using a high-quality etching primer on the bare metal, followed by the paint color of your choice. Once the paint is dry, install the removable skid plates to the rocker knockers using the supplied 1/4 inch 20 by 3/4 inch stainless steel flathead cap screws, flat washers, and lock nuts. Perform the final installation of the rocker knockers onto the Jeep with the same hardware and procedures used during the pre-installation process. You may choose to weld the rocker knockers directly to the frame and body mount brackets for ultimate strength if desired. Before doing so, however, we suggest to first pre-install the rocker knockers using only the bolt-on procedures outlined above. Then try installing the removable skid plates while the rocker knockers are installed on the Jeep. Confirm that you will be able to reach the nuts on the back side of the rocker knocker with a wrench for installing and removing the skids before welding the rocker knockers in place. Again, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns about this installation procedure or the product, be sure to give our sales staff a call. They'd love to help you out and they really know their Jeeps.
You can't get your hand.
Yeah. How's it going? Here's a couple other things to consider when you're considering. Here's a couple other things. A couple more things to consider if you can. A couple more things to think about if you're considering frame-mounted rocker. May not be the simplest way, but it's definitely the best way, and that's just kind of the way we do it here. Well, I hate to stay tuned.